Hi everyone, Cornell here. Welcome to my Blooming Bakes channel, and today we are making cinnamon rolls or Chelsea buns. Wherever you are in the world, cinnamon rolls are very popular with a lot of people, and this is a really easy recipe to make. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to need 450 grams of plain or all-purpose flour. I like to not use everything at the same time, so I'm just going to keep a little bit back. So we're going to put all of that, most of it in. I'm just going to keep a little bit back because I like to work with the consistency of my dough right at the end. So 450 grams of all-purpose flour in total. Put the majority of that in your mixing bowl. Then you need 50 grams of sugar. Just normal sugar is fine. You can put all of that in. 1 packet of instant yeast. So this is just a local brand that I buy from my grocery store. Instant yeast, their house brand. A whole packet, which is usually about 7 grams. And we're just going to give this a little stir, just to make sure it's all mixed in. There we go. And just make a little hole in the middle of your dry ingredients. Just make a little hole in the middle, and we're going to put our liquid in there. Now for the liquid, I have already pre-measured in a bowl here. We've got 60 ml of water, which is 1/4 cup. Double that of milk, and so 120 ml of milk, and 60 grams of butter. And the butter, you can use whatever you prefer, whether it's full fat proper butter or a dairy-free alternative like stork. It doesn't matter. 60 grams of butter, and we're going to pop this in the microwave for about 30 to 60 seconds. Until the butter is melted, and give it a good stir, and we're going to add that to our dry ingredients. So let's warm this up in the microwave. Okay, so our liquid was in the microwave for about 60 seconds until your butter is starting to melt. So just give it a nice good stir. I'm just getting the last few clumps of butter to melt as well, and we're going to add that to our dry ingredients. Okay, so right in the middle of your dry ingredients, we're just going to pour this in. All of it can go straight in. Add a bit of salt. I usually don't measure out my salt, I just do it by hand, but I would say about a quarter to half a teaspoon of salt. Put that in as well, and we're going to add 1 egg. One egg, and that goes in your mixture as well. Don't worry, your milk and your liquid is not hot enough that will cook your egg. So you can put your eggs straight in there. And we're going to mix this. Start slow, and then you can increase your speed. So as you can see, this is quite a wet dough now, and definitely not right to work with yet. So we're going to now add little bits of our leftover flour to this dough until we reach the right consistency. And you should reach the right consistency when you've added all of your flour. But as I said, I like to just keep a little bit out and work with my dough at this stage until I reach the right consistency. Also because sometimes the flour brand makes a difference. So you might not use exactly 450 grams of flour depending on which brand you use. So it's always safe to just keep a little bit back and you can add it as you go. So I'm just going to give my bowl a scrape down the sides. You'll also note that I'm using my dough hook for the attachment to my mixer. I'm using an electric stand mixer. You can mix this by hand as well. It will just be a bit harder work, but it is definitely possible. But if you use your stand mixer, use your dough hook attachment, which is what you use for breads. Right, so I've scraped my bowl down and I'm now going to add about half of the flour that I've got left. Okay. You'll also note that I've got a lid onto my stand mixer and I've just opened the little flap lid on the side. Because you've added warm liquid to this, you will find if you've got the lid closed, your mixer bowl is going to steam up and create more moisture, which you don't want. So make sure you either take your lid off or just open the little flap lid on the side to make sure the steam can escape from your bowl. Now every time I mix the dough, I only mix until it's incorporated all of the flour I've just added, and you can see the dough lifts off from the side of the bowl and it comes together as a ball, and then I stop mixing. So don't over mix, you literally just want to make sure your flour is incorporated. Now already this is starting to look better, but it is still a bit sticky and a bit wet, so I am going to put in the rest of my flour. Okay, now that is a much better dough. You can see it's not so droopy, it's still falling down, it's a little bit sticky, but I can already touch it and it's not going to stick to my fingers too much. Now I like to stop at this point because we're still going to do a bit of kneading of the dough, and with that process we're still adding a little bit of flour. So by that stage, this dough will be perfect. So just get all the dough off the hook. There we go. I'm going to move my stand mixer out of the way. Grab some flour. So this is in addition to the 450 grams of flour we've already used in the dough. We're now going to use just a little bit extra to do a bit of kneading. So just a spoonful of flour. We're just going to put that on your work surface. And get your dough out. And we're just going to do a bit of kneading on the work surface to get it nice and pliable and ready for us to work with. So as you work with your dough, because you're now working in a little bit more flour, you'll start to feel that your dough is coming together really nicely. See, it's not sticking to my hands at all, and it's starting to take the shape and consistency that you want. Okay. So not a huge amount of kneading, I'm probably doing this for a minute or two. And we're now going to form our rolls. So there's your little ball of dough. Just pop that back into your mixing bowl just to rest while we get our surface ready to make our cinnamon rolls. I'm going to pop that back there. Now I actually already have quite a bit of flour left. I'll just add a tiny bit more to my work surface, and then we're going to roll out the dough for our cinnamon rolls. Okay, so get your ball of dough, put it on your floured work surface, and use a rolling pin, and we're just going to roll this out. There is no right or wrong way to do this, and you can really roll it out as thin or as thick as you like. You will see, because our dough is now the right consistency, it does sort of jump back on you. So you'll see you'll roll and the dough pulls back. That is absolutely fine. That is what it's doing. Don't worry about it. Just keep rolling. Make sure you are doing it on a floured surface though, so that your dough doesn't stick to your work surface. It is slightly tricky to get an exact rectangular shape, but again, don't worry about it too much, because we are going to roll this into a big sausage shape and cut it to form our cinnamon rolls. So it just needs to be roughly in a triangular shape. Right. Now, when you're at this stage, I've got quite a freehand style to add the fillings to my cinnamon rolls. So I can give you rough guidance on how much, but again, it really doesn't matter. You can add whatever you like at this stage and however much of it you like. So first of all, it doesn't matter what topping you want on it. We're going to start with butter. Now I literally spread my butter on like you would do on toast. So probably in total we're going to use about 60 grams of butter, but I'm literally going to spread it like you would spread toast. So just take a blob of butter. Now at this stage, if you work with real full fat butter, make sure it's room temperature, otherwise you're going to struggle to spread it. It will be too hard and you're just going to push holes into your dough. I'm personally at this point, I'm using Stork, which is a dairy-free butter alternative, and it's softer than real butter, so it's easier to spread as well. And my Stork has literally been out of the fridge only for the time it took to make the dough, so not a huge amount of time at all, but it is soft enough to spread. So make sure you go right to the edges, because your butter is going to give you all that nice goodness to your cinnamon rolls, but it's also giving your filling something to stick to. So make sure you go all the way to the edges, otherwise what you put on next won't stick. Okay, so as I said, really not an exact science to this. If I have to give you some guidance, I would say about 50 to 60 grams of butter. But you can use as much or as little as you like. Right, okay, so let's put our butter to one side. Now again, with cinnamon, I've got quite a free hand, so I'm literally going to sprinkle it straight out of my container onto my dough. Some people like a lot of cinnamon, some just sprinkle. So I do this a lot for customers. So I like to ask them what's their preference. Do you like a lot of cinnamon or just a little bit? And the same with the icing that you put on top at the end of the bake. Some people just like a drizzle and some like a lot of icing. So it is really a very flexible recipe. Right, so there's our cinnamon. Again, I would say probably 4 teaspoons of cinnamon that you can distribute across. And then I quite like using brown sugar to add on top. You can use any type of sugar. You can do normal white sugar or soft brown sugar, whatever you prefer. I like to use brown sugar simply because it adds a bit of a caramel taste to your cinnamon rolls. So grab a spoon and we're literally going to sprinkle this over like you would do with sprinkling sugar over a pancake. No exact science. Just make sure you have some sugar everywhere, and it's easy to see when you're standing this close to your dough. You can see the areas that don't have sugar yet. Try and just sprinkle it in an even layer. So again, as with the other toppings, you can choose however much you want to put on here. I've probably added now about 4 to 5 tablespoons of brown sugar, but you can add less or you can add more, just like you want. Right, now here we're going to roll our cinnamon rolls. If you want, you can still add additional fillings. So a lot of people like raisins in their cinnamon rolls as well. So if you want raisins in it, now's the time to add a few raisins. I'm not going to do raisins today, and we're now going to go into the roll. So from that side, just lift your dough, and the first bit is the most important. So start forming quite a tight roll. We're literally pushing your dough just to form that first roll, which needs to be quite tight. And then once that's done, it's quite easy. Use the length of your hand, and we're just going to bring it all towards you. Just keep rolling. There we go. Okay, I like to let it rest just on the seam right at the bottom. Now here is a little trick for you, the way we're going to cut it. I mean, you can use a knife and cut it now, but I'm going to show you a little trick about how you can cut this in a really neat way. Okay, so we are going to cut our cinnamon rolls now. Grab your dish if you want to bake them in. I like to use sort of aluminium tin foil trays. This one is a 9 by 9 inch square tray, quite strong because your bread or your rolls is quite heavy, so you want something strong. You're going to get about 10 rolls out of this, so whatever dish is big enough for that. And here is the trick. So we are going to cut our cinnamon rolls with dental floss. Don't use obviously the ones that are mint flavored, but if you just use normal dental floss that's not flavored in any way, and we're going to get that underneath. Just make some marks for yourself where you want to cut it. So I'm going to cut this in 10. So that's 5 over there. 3. And then just align your dental floss with where you want to cut. Pull it around and pull. So there you have a perfect cinnamon roll. So we'll just put that to one side and continue. So around, cross at the top and pull. And there we have perfectly cut cinnamon rolls. If you try to use a knife, you often get a slightly squashed cinnamon roll because the knife has to get through though. Right, now we're just going to add this to our tray. I like to just get my butter back, and with just a little blob of butter, just like that, you're just going to take a little bit off that and make sure the edge is sealed. So just pull that edge and stick it with the butter. You see that is almost forming, it acts like glue, and we can pack that into our tray. Now while we're doing this and while we've been making the dough, I've had my oven on, which is another little trick. I've got my oven on 50 degrees. It's barely on. 50 degrees is like the minimum temperature setting on my oven. And I'm just warming my oven up to 50 degrees Celsius. And when I'm ready to prove my dough, I'm going to switch the oven off, pop these dough balls in the oven, and just let them stay there for an hour. So the little bit of heat that I would have pre-generated by just heating the oven up to 50 degrees Celsius will then be enough to give me a perfect rise. This now, of course, if you don't have a proving drawer in your oven, if you've got one of those, then you sort it as well. Okay, so this is what my rolls are looking like, and you can see there's quite a lot of space left in my tray. We're now going to cover this with cling film. I like to do it double, so put cling film all over one way, push it down on the sides, turn your tray, put another layer of cling film over to make sure it's really airtight. And we're going to pop that into our preheated 50 degree Celsius oven, and it's going to rise for about an hour until it's doubled in size. There will be no gaps left between your rolls, and then it will be ready to bake. Right, so let's do that. Okay, our cinnamon rolls have risen, they've doubled in size, if not more. No gaps left. We're just going to cut off all the cling film. So it was in my preheated oven. Remember that I preheated to 50 degrees Celsius and then switched it off. And it was in that oven for about an hour. So we're just taking all the cling film off, and we're now going to pop it in a preheated oven. I bake mine at about 170 to 180 degrees Celsius, and I've got my fan setting on as well, but you can do it 170 to 180 degrees Celsius in a conventional oven as well. And about halfway through your bake, if you see you've already got nice brown tops, just pop a bit of foil, kitchen foil over so that the top of your buns don't burn, and I'll show you what it looks like when they come out. So there we have it. Our cinnamon rolls was in the oven at 180 degrees Celsius for about 20 minutes, and halfway through I've just added a bit of kitchen foil, shiny side down, literally just like that. Don't push it down, just gently on the top, and that protected your rolls from not burning at the top. So they've got a lovely, lovely golden brown colour, and we're now going to leave them to cool down until they're completely cool, and then we will put some icing on the top. For the icing, you need about 1 cup of icing sugar with just a little bit of vanilla essence, just to give it a little bit of flavour, and about 2 tablespoons of full fat milk. You can also use something else than milk if you want to just give it another flavour. So 1 cup of icing sugar, 2 tablespoons of milk, and a little bit of vanilla essence. And once this is cooled down, you literally just drizzle that over the top of your cinnamon rolls, and you've got lovely, lovely rolls to enjoy. As I said, 10 rolls out of this recipe. The center 2 are a tiny bit smaller, but yeah, enjoy. This is so nice, and I am often so sad when I have to give it away when I make it to customers, because the smells divine. The way, by the way, if you want to know how do you know it is actually cooked, can you hear that? So if you knock on the top of your bread, it will sound hollow, but you can also use a little test needle and just stick it into the bread and take it out, and it will come out clean. So that's the different way to, but with bread, if you just knock on the top of it, it will sound hollow. It sounds like you're knocking on a door, and that's how you know your rolls are done. So send me your pictures of your cinnamon rolls. I hope you use this recipe. It's so easy to make. Oh, this hand is getting really hot. It is so easy to make, and everybody will enjoy it. See you soon. Bye.